Thank you. Thanks, Fred. Thank you. Hello, everybody. Well, I have to say I'm delighted to be here in Scotland. I'm having a wonderful time. I arrived on Monday morning and we started off this roadshow in Glasgow. We spent some time in the police college. On Tuesday morning, I conducted a masterclass for quite a few people there. And then we moved to Falkirk and Kirkcaldy, I have to say it correctly. And then I shall be actually heading off on Monday because I'll be heading back down south via Liverpool. And actually this time next week, I'm going to be at Plymouth University. So I've been invited as a guest lecturer to talk at their business school about resilience, because that's a topic I've been very much involved with. And I'm going to talk to you for about 30 minutes. I think, something like that, 25, 30 minutes. And then we're going to have a questions and answers. So before I start to talk to you about what I'm going to talk about, let me give you a little bit of my background in terms of what my credentials are for coming here and sharing this information with you. My name is Liggy Webb. I'm from the UK. If you're wondering what Liggy stands for, it's short for Elizabeth. So just thought I'd clarify that one for you. I have a few roles, 3 roles very specifically. So first of all, I'm the managing director of an organisation called the Learning Architect. And the Learning Architect is a consortium of behavioural skills specialists. So we work across industry, we work nationally and internationally. We have a very eclectic client range. So if I sort of list some of our clients from the United Nations, the NHS, we work a lot in public sector and in government, we work with the police force, but we also work as well with private sector. So one of our clients, for example, is Warner Brothers, we work with the Royal Shakespeare Company, we work a lot with pharmaceuticals and also with retail. The other part of my role is as an international consultant for the United Nations. I've been working on their competency framework now for around 7 years. So I travel to a real range of different places, including the Secretariat and headquarters in New York and Geneva, but I also get to go to duty stations and peace missions. So over the last few years, I've been traveling to places like Afghanistan, Beirut, Cambodia, Ethiopia. So certainly had some very, very varied experiences and met some really fascinating people. And as you can imagine, I spend an awful lot of time sitting in airports and public transport. So to keep myself occupied, I do lots of writing. I've always been very interested in writing. I'm currently working on a fiction book at the moment. But I have actually written 6 books around the topic of stress management and well-being. And currently, my latest book, Resilience, which has just made it into the bestsellers on Amazon, I'm delighted to say, a book called Resilience, where I had the opportunity, my publisher, Capstone Wiley, asked me to go out and write a book, and they said, we'll give you some time for research. So I actually conducted interviews with about 100 people who had experienced diversity, so a real range of diversity, from really some very extreme cases to perhaps what we might consider to be quite minor. But remember that, you know, we're all affected in different ways, and what I wanted to do was really drill down to find out, you know, exactly as Tina was saying earlier, what is it that makes some people able to cope with some really extreme adversity when other people might crumble at the first hurdle. So drilling down and identifying what those core behaviours were was absolutely fascinating. And I have to say, it was a real emotional journey for me. And I think I spent, you know, most of my time writing the book with, you know, feeling really quite tearful, because in terms of the human spirit, there really are some extraordinary individuals on this planet who, you know, set some fantastic examples. So that's just a little bit about some of the work that I do. I am a huge advocate of positive psychology, so I'll certainly be sharing some experience with that. I also support mental health charities. So actively, I do a lot of work around this. And I also support something called Global Give Back. So any intellectual property that's been put together and designed is actually given back so that charitable organisations can access this free of charge. And also I have been quite involved in presentations and certainly working on the report around working for a healthier tomorrow. Dame Carol Black produced an excellent report to government and is involved with something called Mindful Employee, and I will be actually co-presenting with Dame Carol in October later on in the year, because we'll be having the 10th anniversary for Mindful Employee. So some of my background, I hope that's been quite useful for you. I'm going to talk to you a bit about engagement. We're focusing very much on the topic of well-being, but what I'd like to do is stretch that a little bit wider, simply because this word engagement has been mainstreamed through management thinking. It's very much about how do we engage people in organisations to really be inspired to want to go that extra mile. And I'm curious actually in terms of the definition of engagement, because I hear lots of different examples, and I'd be quite curious to find out from yourselves what you think engagement means, people engagement in a business context. So perhaps just with the person next to you or behind you, just spend a minute having a chat and sharing ideas about what you think the definition is of people engagement, okay? So just a minute, just to chat amongst yourself. What does engagement mean? Okay, can I just stop? Can I just stop you there? Let's see then. Let's see what some of those definitions. Anybody over here would like to share with me some examples of definitions for engagement? What do you reckon? Any words that spring to mind? People engagement in organisations. What's it all about?
Desire.
Desire. Participation. What about over here? Listening. It's about listening. What else is it about, do you reckon?
Nature's way of preparing you for marriage.
Very good. That's a new one on me. Yeah, nature's way. Yeah, definitely. Any other examples here of what people engagement is?
Involvement throughout the organization.
Yeah, absolutely. It's about involving people. And a while ago, I was asked to actually do a case study, a presentation. I was working with Reuters on a presentation, and I wanted to really identify, what is people engagement? What's a common understanding? So I targeted about 20 of my clients that I'd worked with and sent an email and said, would you please just send me back your definitions of engagement? And it was really quite extraordinary, the wide range of definitions that I received. And if we look at CIPD, the Chartered Institute of Personal Development, their definition, it's quite lengthy. I'm a big fan of simplicity, but this is sort of quite a lengthy description, but it's about being positively present during the performance of work by willingly contributing to intellectual effort, experiencing positive emotions and meaningful connections to others. I'm going to distill this, because what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to define this in 3 pillars. The first one is about intellectual engagement. So this is about people's thinking ability. It's about their cognitive ability. So it's a way that they would process that on an intellectual level. The second one is about effective engagement. And effective engagement is how we feel. Okay, so if we're winning hearts and minds of people in organisations, it's how they feel when they wake up in the morning. Do they bound out of bed really excited about going into work because they know they can make a difference? So it's about affecting, really how people feel. And we talk about involvement. That's really important, because this is about social engagement. We need to interact. That's really good to be able to cultivate that in the organisation, so people feel that they are part of something and they are connected, and that way they will take on board a sense of responsibility for the way that they are going to affect other people. And if we look at the key engagement drivers, the organisation I work with, the Learning Architect, we asked organisations if we could conduct focus groups to really identify, what is it that is important in terms of engagement for an individual. The first one that came on to our radar was the relationship with the direct line manager. Now let me pose this to you. People don't leave organisations necessarily, they leave managers. And those of you who have ever experienced a challenging relationship with your line manager, I'm sure you'll understand what I mean. So that relationship is absolutely key. The second one was a belief in the senior leadership. And this is about respect, isn't it? Because if you've got people in a senior leadership position in their goldfish bowl in the sky, actually saying, do as I say, but don't do as I do. Because at times, and certainly I've witnessed this, we don't have a role model at senior level. And in order for there to be a belief in that system and a respect, then that's really key. The other area was about pride in working for an organisation. Now, I'm privileged in the sense that I get to work with lots of organisations, a real eclectic mix. And certainly those organisations that engender in their people a real pride in their organisation. It's absolutely incredible what you can get people to do, how you can get people involved if they have a real passion and a real respect for that organisation. So being able to generate that pride is key. How do engaged employees feel? Well, there's 4 highlighted areas. One is that they feel trusted. Because if we are asking people to be accountable, and more in organisations, we are asking people to innovate, we're asking people to challenge, we're asking people to take responsibility, they need to feel trusted. It's also about respect, because everybody wants to feel that they are respected. It's about being involved. That's very, very key, to know that you can make a difference and you're part of something. And it's about being valued. So people feel that they are very much supported and valued. So what I'm going to do, if it's okay with you, probably for about the next sort of 15 minutes or so, I'm just going to share with you some of my observations from the experiences that I've had talking to people, working with organisations, some positive observations, some maybe not so positive observations. But it's a bit of food for thought, and we are going to have a questions and answers afterwards. So, if you want to sort of challenge some of these or drill down and find out some more information, you'll have an opportunity to. But let me just walk you through this. Mission, vision and values. Okay? Every organisation now has mission, vision and values. The big question we need to ask is, how are those put together? Because I've seen some very interesting examples, good examples of where you actually involve organisations. You actually, we talk about people being the strategy. So actually getting people involved in putting together and identifying what those vision and values are. I've also seen some very poor examples of where some of these vision statements are put together. Perhaps marketing have got together, they've designed this very sort of lovely fancy sheet. They've even got the CEO to produce a video, and then it's all kind of handed out to everybody. Here you go, here's our values. And what we want you to do is just buy into those values and support them. And this is where we go out of the human context, because people aren't machines. Yeah? And this is a very process-driven approach, because if it is about winning hearts and minds, if it is about engaging people, people need to feel involved in that. So how we put together vision and values is key. And I was sitting in Paddington Station a little while ago, and I was sitting with my laptop doing some work, waiting for a meeting, and there was 2 guys sitting next to me on another table, and they were having a discussion, and they said, we've got to put together a vision and values statement. So what I've done is I've printed off lots of vision and values from organisations, and what we can do is we can pick out some key words and then we can put a statement together. Yeah, that will do. It's really quite shocking actually. But there you go, and I'm sure that probably does happen on occasions. The other observation that I've made is about sustainability. Now, this is something I tend to bang on a lot with about, in organisations, in terms of, we would love to come in and help you with behavioural change. We'd love to come in and implement some of the programmes. The big question that we're asking you is, what are you doing in terms of sustainability? Okay, how are you going to evaluate the effectiveness of the behavioural skills training? What involvement does the line manager have? And what impact is it going to have on your organisation 6 months down the line, a year down the line, 5 years down the line? Because if this is a sheep dipping process, which on occasions it is, we wouldn't be interested in working with those people, because we wouldn't find that is about operating with integrity. Because when we're taking people through behavioural skills programme, it's a very involved process. So there needs to be sustainable support. And if organisations are implementing words like innovation, we want everybody to innovate. Okay, what infrastructure have you got in place to support people when that innovation doesn't work? because it's no good saying to people, we want you to challenge, we want you to try things differently, and then they make a mistake, as they invariably will, and then they get bashing over the head for it. You know, there has to be that support, because to increase your rate of success, you've got to be prepared to increase your rate of failure. So the whole point around sustainability and support through learning is key. This question is asked quite a lot in learning and development, because you have people who sit there and they go, well, I don't know why I'm here. My manager told me to come along. I don't really want to come along. Totally disengaged. So again, they need to be very involved and very informed in terms of why they're there. The line manager is very important as well in terms of the relationship with those people. Because again, when people go through learning and development interventions, what ends up happening is they come out all motivated and enlightened, but the line manager hasn't got a clue what they've been through and isn't able to support them. And that's what the line manager needs to do, to support, to champion some of that learning and to be able to connect. We, on occasion, certainly in my organisation, experience the mentality of, I'm going to send my people along to a training workshop and we're going to expect you to fix our people. It is not learning and development or HR's responsibility to fix people in organisations. That is more about the relationship with the line manager. Challenges, we will have many. And I think that more so now in modern life than at any other time, we are going to experience rapid, relentless change. We are going to experience lots of challenges. And certainly I'll talk a little bit more in detail about well-being, but in terms of mental health, according to the World Health Organization, by 2020, depression will be the second biggest form of illness worldwide. According to Mind, 1 in 4 people will be affected. So, you know, we have got lots of challenges. And I would like to identify one area that is really challenging all of us at the moment, and that is technology. Because it's really quite overwhelming, isn't it? And I find it extraordinary how mobile phones and mobile technology intrudes in people's relationships in a very negative way. You know, I'm not saying all of technology is negative. It's not. It's incredible. It's amazing what we can do with it. But the way that it affects our relationships, I would say that we really need to start developing mobile etiquette. I was talking to a manager in Geneva not long ago, and she said to me, you know, my manager doesn't respect me. She doesn't value me and she doesn't respect me. And I said to her, well, can you give me an example of why you think that is? Because sometimes it, you know, it can be a perception. And she said, okay, I'll give you a case example. She said, we were conducting my performance review, and my manager sat down and she took a mobile phone down and she put it on the table next to her. She turned it onto silent, but it was still on. During my performance review, the phone started flashing. My manager picked the phone up, had a conversation. She then put the phone in her bag and said, I'm really sorry, but I'm going to have to postpone the performance review because something more important has come up. I kind of took her point, yeah? And, you know, I certainly think this whole area around technology is quite fascinating in terms of what people think is acceptable and what people think isn't. And I've just written an article for HR Zone. It should be coming out in the next couple of weeks, and it's called Mind Your Mobile Manners. And one of the stories that I actually included in it was something I read in the papers just before Christmas about a Taiwanese woman who was holidaying in Australia, and she was so intent on looking at Facebook she actually walked off the end of a dock. And when the police went to rescue her, they found out that she couldn't swim, so she was lying on her back, but she was actually still holding her mobile phone. So it was quite amusing. The woman was safe, so we can say that's an amusing story. But really, you know, this is about information overload as well. We are being totally overstimulated, we're being completely bombarded, and actually this has a big effect as well on our well-being, because there are times we are not just getting out and being present with the world around us. We're completely controlled by this little gadget to the point where we become addicted. You know, I can guarantee when we've finished that the majority of people in here will be in their pockets and in their bags and out with their mobile phones to check messages, myself included. But, you know, sometimes I think we need to take a techno holiday. That's what we need to do. Switch off all gadgets and just be, you know, at one with the natural world around us as well. This is a rotting plant in a rotting pot. Because what I want to actually demonstrate here is if we look at the distribution curve of people in organisations, so the sort of bell curve, we could say that 20% would be our high talent, yeah? These are our engaged, enthused people. We then have about 70% that is our compliant, okay? So they're there, they'll do the job. We then got about 10% of people in organisations who are what I call the toxic element, okay? These are the people who are negative. These are the people who drain energy. I have called them doom goblins, yeah, because I experience a lot of these on my travels and in my work. You have these people who are disengaged, actively disengaged, and also what they'd like to do is disengage everybody else, because they will go round going, oh, have you heard that? Oh, it's all, oh, we're going through change again. Oh, the organisation is doing this to me. They are drains, yeah. We did some work with the police the other day, and I think somebody called them, what was it, a psychic vampire.
Right.
Yeah, so sucking all of that energy out of you. And where do managers spend their biggest percentage of time? Nurturing and developing their high talent? Nurturing and developing their compliant? No. They spend it being drained by the 10% toxic. So the challenge here is, what do we do about the doom goblins in our organisation? My suggestion is this: we ring fence and identify who they are, and then we give them the opportunity to change. We actually show them what they need to do. We educate them, we train them, we involve them in developing a more positive mindset, a more responsible mindset. And if those people, when they are given that opportunity, decide and make a conscious choice not to take that on board, then we need to performance manage them. And certainly some of my observations is that managers don't want to do that. They don't want to have the difficult conversations. The big elephant in the room, they'd rather ignore it and hope it will go away. And you know what? It never does. So this toxic element, we really need to do something about it. And I'm certainly a big advocate of positive psychology, and it's a relatively new science. It's been pioneered by a doctor in America called Dr. Martin Seligman. He's done some extraordinary work, and certainly I've used a lot of his research in my books, in the content of a lot of the work that I do. The principles of positive psychology are all about focusing on positive outcomes. It's not being unrealistic, putting your fingers in your ears, saying everything's fantastic, because it isn't. Life is challenging. You know, part of being a human being is we experience the wide palette of emotions, and those can be the happy, the positives, as well as some of the pain and the challenges that we have. But it's about the day-to-day choices that we make. Because sometimes we can't change a situation, we can't do anything about the circumstances, but we can 100% choose our attitude around that. And that's really, really key. And it's about taking responsibility for the way you affect other people. Now, let me ask you a question. In fact, two. I'm going to ask you two questions. And I'd really like to see a show of hands, okay? If you had a really bad cold or flu, would you go up to somebody in the work environment and sneeze directly in their face? Would anybody do that? Don't say it depends on who it is. No. It wouldn't be a nice thing to do. It's not a good thing to do, of course. However, let me ask you another question. Have you ever had a bad day at work? Yeah, something stressed you out, you felt a bit overwhelmed, somebody's rubbed you up the wrong way, and you've gone and found somebody and you've had a good old whinge. Yeah, anybody done that? Yeah. I think there's a few saints in the room, but generally what will happen is from time to time you just get so worked up, you find somebody and you have a good old whinge. What you are doing, I would suggest, is not dissimilar to sneezing in their face. Because now, with some of the remarkable scientific evidence that we have, there is something that's been identified which is known as neural mirroring. And what neural mirroring means is that you can actively catch another person's negative attitude germs. I call them nags, yeah? You catch another person's nags. And think about it, it does happen, doesn't it? You know, there are people who you can spend 5 minutes with and you actively feel drained. There are other people, however, who are radiators and they make you feel really positive. And we have to take responsibility. Because you know what? If we want to decide to become the victim, and if we want to have our own little pity party, then to a degree we're entitled to do that. However, we need to think about how we affect other people. And if we all take responsibility for the energy that we have and how we affect other people, then I would say that would contribute very positively to every working environment that we're in. So there is a lot to be said for positive thinking, and I believe that every education environment, every work environment, that there should be something implemented to help educate people on how to think more positively. I'm a huge fan of CBT. I don't know if any of you are familiar with cognitive behavioural therapy, but it's about giving people choices, because the human mind is absolutely incredible. You know, we have 60 to 80,000 independent thoughts a day. That's a huge amount of internal dialogue, and we control it. It doesn't control us. So empowering people to understand this is going to be really, really helpful. And change. You know, so often I hear people saying, oh, I don't like change. Oh, gosh, change, it's happening again, isn't it? You know, if you say, I don't like change, it's tantamount to saying, I don't like life. Because the one inevitability in our lives is that there will be change. And as Charles Darwin said, it's not the strongest of the species that survives or the most intelligent, it's the one that is the most adaptable to change. So what we need to do is to create agility. So rather than resist change, which means you're going to break, actually be able to navigate your way around change, to think about the options that you've got available to you and the opportunities. And to summarise, and this links in very, very nicely to employee well-being, this is about taking a holistic approach. You know, 7 years ago, I wrote a book called How to Work Wonders, and I was doing lots of work with organisations around well-being. And I would get into big debates with people where they'd say, oh, it's fluffy stuff, isn't it? There is a solid business case in terms of employee well-being. When you think about the deficit to our economy for sickness absenteeism, it's £100 billion a year. That's the same as the running cost for the NHS. So it's so essential that we invest in well-being, because if you have got physically and emotionally happy people in your organisations, that is going to have a big impact on the bottom line. And also it's going to make environments much more positive. So in terms of engagement, then that's going to help you tremendously. So I'm going to summarise on that point. Thank you very much for your attention, everybody. I've really enjoyed sharing that information with you. And I'm now going to pass you over to Fred.
Thanks very much, Liggy.